Hello, Spiritual Gangsters, and welcome back to another episode of the Spiritual Gangster Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Pieraldi, and today we're talking about something I think that a lot of people quietly struggle with, but don't always say it out loud. Triggers. And more specifically, what happens when you've done the healing work, you've grown, you've evolved, and then suddenly something still triggers you anyway? Because let's be honest for a second, that can feel frustrating. You start thinking, why am I reacting like this again? I thought I healed this. Why is this still affecting me? Shouldn't I be over this by now? Meanwhile, one comment, one situation, one tone of voice, one memory, one interaction, and suddenly your nervous system is doing backflips against your will. And I think sometimes people misunderstand healing. They think healing means becoming unbothered all the time, perfect all the time, calm all the time, emotionally unaffected all the time. But healing does not turn you into a robot. You're still a human being. You still have experiences. You still have emotions. You still have memories attached to pain. You still have a nervous system. Healing does not erase your humanity. And honestly, I think social media has made this worse sometimes. Everybody online acts like healing means floating through life completely zen 24/7, with perfect boundaries, perfect reactions, perfect communication, drinking green juice under a full moon while never getting emotionally activated ever again. Meanwhile, in real life, healing is way messier than that. Healing sometimes looks like catching yourself faster, recovering faster, responding differently, choosing differently, being more self-aware, not abandoning yourself during hard moments. That's growth, not perfection. And I think one of the biggest mindset shifts is understanding this. Getting triggered is not the failure. What you do with the trigger matters more. Because triggers are often just information. They reveal wounds, patterns, fears, unmet needs, old conditioning, places that still need compassion, places where your nervous system still remembers pain. And just because something hurts sometimes doesn't mean you've made no progress. Let me say that again for the people in the back. Just because something still hurts sometimes does not mean that you haven't healed. Because healing is not linear. Some days you feel grounded, peaceful, emotionally regulated, mature, thriving. And other days, somebody sends a dry text message and suddenly your inner child is writing conspiracy theories. Be serious and listen. Sometimes the trigger itself is not even about the current moment. Sometimes your reaction is connected to an old wound. Rejection, abandonment, criticism, feeling unseen, feeling unsafe, feeling not good enough, feeling unheard, feeling emotionally dismissed. And what happens is your body reacts before your logical mind catches up. That's why sometimes you know you're overreacting while simultaneously feeling deeply triggered, which is honestly one of the most annoying human experiences imaginable. You're sitting there like, I know this is irrational, but your nervous system is like, respectfully, we ride at dawn. And I think healing teaches you to pause before reacting. Not suppress, not pretend, not spiritually bypass your emotions and act like everything is love and light while internally combusting. No. Healing teaches you to become aware. To sit with yourself long enough to ask, what is this really bringing up in me? Because sometimes the situation itself is small, but the emotion attached to it is old. That's important. And honestly, one of the strongest things a person can do is stop shaming themselves for being triggered. I think people are way too hard on themselves during healing. They expect themselves to heal perfectly, quickly, gracefully, and quietly. But healing can be uncomfortable. Sometimes healing looks like crying in your car. Sometimes healing looks like realizing you've outgrown certain people. Sometimes healing looks like setting boundaries that make other people uncomfortable. Sometimes healing looks like recognizing patterns you used to normalize. And sometimes healing looks like getting triggered and choosing not to become destructive because of it. That's growth too. Because old versions of ourselves react differently. Old versions of ourselves lashed out immediately, shut down emotionally, people-pleased, avoided conflict, exploded, internalized everything, pretended not to care, abandoned ourselves to keep the peace. But healed versions, or healing versions, because let's be real, we're all still works in progress. Healing versions pause. They reflect. They communicate better. They regulate before reacting. They take accountability. They stop projecting unresolved pain onto everybody else. And that doesn't mean that they never get activated. It just means they don't stay there as long. That's the difference. I also think people need to stop expecting healing to look glamorous. Sometimes growth is deeply humbling, because nothing will humble you faster than realizing you still have triggers in areas where you thought you were completely healed. Woo! Life really said, surprise! But honestly, that doesn't erase your progress. Think about physical healing for a second. If you injure your ankle and it heals, that doesn't mean it never feels sensitive again. It just means you learned how to care for it better. Emotional healing can be similar. Certain experiences leave emotional imprints, especially painful ones. And while healing absolutely changes you, it doesn't mean your nervous system suddenly has amnesia. You remember. Your body remembers. Your mind remembers. The difference is you now have tools. And tools matter. Because there's a difference between being triggered and becoming consumed by the trigger. That's where self-awareness comes in. Sometimes you need to ask yourself, is this person actually hurting me right now? Or is this moment reminding me of a past version of pain? That question can change everything. And listen, healing also requires accountability. Because while triggers are valid, they are not excuses to treat people terribly. That part matters too. Being hurt does not give us permission to become harmful. And I think mature healing is learning how to communicate without weaponizing pain. That takes work. Real work. Not performative social media healing. Not posting quotes while avoiding accountability. Not pretending to be evolved while still emotionally dumping on everyone around you. Actual inner work. The kind where you sit with yourself honestly. The kind where you recognize your patterns instead of always blaming everyone else. The kind where you stop expecting other people to heal wounds they didn't create. And woo, that one can be hard to hear, but necessary. I also want to say this because I think somebody listening needs this reminder. Being triggered does not automatically mean you're regressing. Sometimes it simply means life presented you with another opportunity to respond differently than you used to. And that's powerful. Because every time you choose awareness over impulsiveness, every time you choose communication over chaos, every time you choose self-respect over self-abandonment, you are healing. Even if it doesn't feel graceful in the moment. And honestly, healing is not about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming emotionally honest. There's a difference. You're allowed to feel things deeply. You're allowed to have emotional reactions. You're allowed to still be affected by certain things. The goal is not to become numb. The goal is to stop letting unhealed pain run your entire life. And I think one of the most beautiful parts of healing is realizing you can experience discomfort without losing yourself completely inside it. That's growth. Because old versions of us stay stuck there. Old versions spiraled for weeks. Old versions abandoned themselves. Old versions thought every trigger meant danger. But healing versions? They breathe. They ground themselves. They reflect. They feel the emotion without becoming the emotion. And trust me, that takes strength. So if you've been hard on yourself lately because something triggered you, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not failing. You are human. Healing is not the absence of triggers. Healing is becoming more aware of what they're trying to teach you. And maybe instead of judging yourself for being activated, you can start asking yourself, what part of me needs compassion right now? That question softens everything. Before we wrap up this episode, I just want to remind you, growth is not always loud. Sometimes it's simply responding differently than you would have a year ago. And honestly, that matters more than people realize. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for another episode of the Spiritual Gangster Podcast. If this episode resonated with you, send it to somebody who's been too hard on themselves during their healing journey. And as always, protect your peace, honor your growth, give yourself grace while you evolve, and keep living like the spiritual gangster you are.